Welcome to this Silicon Web Costumers Guild Presents webinar, Screen Accuracy is a Myth, Creating Costumes Without Losing Your Mind with Johanna Mead. The Silicon Web Costumers Guild presents talks by speakers on a variety of topics about costumes and costuming. The webinars are free to Silicon Web members, and they may also be available to the greater costuming community on a space available basis. If you have feedback or suggestions for future speakers or topics, please send them to board@siwcostumers.org with the subject line webinar series. We always appreciate getting your suggestions. The chapter would like to acknowledge the International Costumers Guild Marty Gear Costuming Arts and Sciences Fund for a grant award in support of developing this webinar series, and the ICG for making its Zoom platform available to chapters and special interest groups. Please leave your video and audio controls on mute. Feel free to chat or react during the presentation in the chat window if you like. There'll be a Q&A period after the presentation. If you want to ask a question, just type it into the chat window and optionally label it as Q&A. And Johanna will take questions at the end, but we may feed her questions that are particularly relevant during the talk. Go ahead and type them in and we will present them when we have a chance. When the webinar is over, please complete a brief survey of your experience. We really appreciate those and we use them to help improve future webinars. It's only natural to strive for screen accuracy when building cosplays, but what if you're told that screen accuracy is actually a myth and there are shortcuts to frustration and bankruptcy? Johanna Mead is going to provide examples of how a costume can look completely different when it's off screen and why. You can learn from a cosplayer with 25 plus years of experience about where you can effectively expend your resources, striving to duplicate the details, and when it's okay to compromise. Johanna Mead has been sewing since the 1990s and still feels like she's starting out despite receiving awards for craftsmanship from conventions such as Worldcon and Gallifrey One. Wanting to help costumers avoid repeating her mistakes, Johanna gives panels on topics such as just what the heck is the difference between chiffon and organza anyway, part of her Making Good Costumes Great series, and today's topic, Screen Accuracy is a Myth, Creating Costumes Without Losing Your Mind. Johanna is a member of the Silicon Web Costumers Guild. Her recent article, Making Acrylic Yarn Wigs, appeared in the February 2024 issue of the Virtual Costumer magazine. Johanna lives in the Pacific Northwest with one husband, 2 cats, and almost too many books. So with that, Johanna, welcome and please take it away.
Okay. I do a lot of panels talking about how to learn from my mistakes. That's actually one of my favorite themes. And I have definitely been guilty of losing my mind in pursuit of screen accuracy. So that's what we're talking about today. If people have questions, as I said, please put them in the Q&A box, and Kathy will feed them to me as appropriate. And also, because I do know I talk too fast, if I'm going a little too fast, let Kathy know and I'll slow down. Now, let's see if we can, oh my goodness, the page down, page up on my, there we are. There's my screen. There we are. There's my next slide. So before we begin, a huge thank you to the members of SheProp, which is an online community, for helping me crowdsource a lot of the photos that you're going to see, because I realized the convention that I originally built this for, which was cancelled by an ice storm, was in 3 days, and I was still short of the photos. SheProp is an online safe space for female identifying non-binary and two-spirit persons who like to create costumes and props. It is a great resource to ask questions, share tips, and celebrate successful projects. The founder, Beverly Downen, who's here in Portland, Oregon, and members of the community have organized and hosted panels at conventions across the USA. You can find us on Facebook and Discord, or you can ping me if you like via whatever channel, and I can send you some links. It's a great community. I do recommend joining it. Beverly saw a need and she filled the heck out of it. So thanks to them. Right. So, screen accurate is a myth. It is. So with the current level of media saturation, cosplayers are aware, to a certain degree, that your costumes are going to look different in person or under hotel lights than they do on the screen. But sometimes I don't think it really gets across how different. There are entire teams of people dedicated to tweaking the footage in post-production so that costumes and skin tones maintain a uniform look through the entire production, despite wildly varying conditions. Anyone who has taken a home video knows that even at one event, a kid's birthday party, the light changes, the sun goes behind the clouds, you go from indoors to outdoors and back again, and that radically changes how the picture looks. This happens on film sets and TV productions in different ways. So, oh, pardon me, something popped up the window. So as cosplays become, what? Good lord and butter, my slide jumped ahead. As cosplays become more widespread and more competitive, there's this growing emphasis on screen accuracy. Like, if you don't get everything 100% correct, then your costume is completely wrong and you're a failure as a costumer and you're a bad person. You'll notice I've put this in caps on the slide. This is BS, and it grinds a lot of joy out of the hobby. You do not need killjoys in your life. As I said, I've been guilty and still occasionally do lapse into this trap of thinking that something has to be 100% screen accurate or you are a failure as a customer. This is not true. This is nowhere near true, particularly because we as individual customers are trying to recreate the efforts of an entire studio's worth of people. When you see a professional costume that is a team effort, possibly dozens of people have contributed their skills to making what one person is wearing. And we're trying to do it all by ourselves. So we're already under a ton of stress. Don't go stressing yourself out further with screen accuracy. As you might guess, this talk is a pep talk, as well as an ongoing set of reassurances. Here we go. So a crash course on light, color, and temperature. You heard me talking just now about light changing when, say, you're taking video and you go from inside your house to outside. So you've probably heard this to one degree or another. There's warm light, there's cool light. Cool light, as you can see from this image, it's a higher color temperature. That's a photographer's term. It's a cinematographer's term. But and it's a little counterintuitive because we're used to red meaning hotter. And yes, red is warm, but in terms of color temperature, it's actually a lower number. Don't have to worry about that. The point is, hotels and those kind of places where we tend to have a lot of our conventions are lit nice and warm because the light is flattering. And convention centers, where we tend to often also spend time in our costumes, places like literal convention centers, are lit very cold and harsh because that is a higher energy lighting that makes you more go get 'em tiger. Whereas in a hotel, they want everyone to be nice and relaxed and comfy and more inclined to spend money, let's be honest. So that right there is a problem because you have the exact same variance in movie set lighting. When they're shooting outdoors under the sun is very blue at high noon. It is very orange and red near sunset. That affects the color, how your skin looks, how your fabric looks. I'm going to get more to that in just a second. But this image here is just to give you an idea of how much light can change and still be light. Now, there's no colored filters on that. It's just, imagine that's the sun different times of day. And here is the sun at different times of day. Mr. Keylight, as we used to call him when I was in film school. As you can see, that's a range of photos from sunrise or sunset to high noon, taken at the same place. And you see how incredibly different everything looks under orange light versus under blue light. Now, keep in mind that's going to, again, your fabric, your skin tone, the props you're carrying, everything changes on what light you're under. And that's true when you're making your costume. You're going to be wearing it in a hotel, you're going to be wearing it in a conventional Hawaii, you're going to be wearing it outside for photo shoots. So suddenly, the whole obsession with color matching for screen accuracy doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is a sanity check, number one. Consider the lighting of your intended venue and how that's going to impact the look of your project. As I said, that 9% time, you're good. 10% time, well, I'll show you some slides and you'll see what I'm talking about. take a swatch of your fabric, because of course you always swatch your fabric before you commit to buying 10 yards, right? Take your swatch of fabric and walk around with it. Look at it in your kitchen, look at it in the front driveway, look at it at high noon, look at it at sunset. Just get an idea. If it helps, take photos of it under those different lighting conditions, and then you can stack those photos on your phone or whatever next to each other. And you can see how different the fabric looks in those different lighting conditions. I am the totally annoying person who absolutely picks up the bolt of fabric and asks the employee at Joann's, can I walk outside with this or go up to the windows with this so I can see how this looks, so I can compare sunlight versus the light in Joann's is terrible. I mean, and retail light tends to be cooler and bluer. Walmart light in particular is terrible, but we're not buying fabric at Walmart, I hope. Anyway, so as I said before, hotel hallways are warmer and more flattering to your skin tone versus the convention space. This also applies when you're doing your makeup. That's a whole other panel. Things are not as they appear to be. Here is an example. This is a very famous example, actually, of how things can look different under set lighting on the left, Bill Shatner there, and the photo on the right was taken at a exhibition at some point. The velour, the gold velour Star Trek tunics are in fact green. They are green under what you would consider everyday light. Star Trek TOS is in fact a fantastic example of how light changes fabric, because they used a lot of heavily colored gels in lighting their sets, because it's a cheap way to establish ambiance instead of building, fancy backdrops and things. You just put a couple different gels on, and when you watch that show, you'll see how much color is falling onto people's costumes, particularly the ladies, of course. So that's one of the most famous examples. The gold tunic is not gold. So when you're making a cosplay, what color do you make it? Do you make it to match the screen? Do you make it to match what it looks like when you see it in the flesh? Now, of course, I think almost everyone here wants to match the screen there. Thank God, that's a fairly easy and flattering color to match. But again, that's just the first example of how things can vary. Putting my money where my mouth is, because again, I learned these lessons myself. Same costume. You see this photo on the left. The best light at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott, which is where Gallifrey is held. The best light in the entire hotel, the most interesting light, I should say, is inside the elevators. So we all did photos in the elevators in the middle of the night. But as you can see, it's extremely blue. That yoke that I'm wearing, it looks almost like it could be silver. It could be gold. Who knows what color it is. Versus the photo on the right, which is when I was on the stage at Worldcon. Never have I been so happy for a tech rehearsal, because the lighting person took one look at the colors of my costume and said, ooh, I'm going to change the lights. And so they lit me with, I think, yellows and golds that really helped bring up the color of that costume. I mean, in a photo on the right, you can't tell that I'm wearing a sort of golden brown leotard under there. So huge difference, and that's just the light. Nothing else is different in those two costumes otherwise. Things are not as they appear to be. Continued. We're going to see a lot of these. As I said, I'm going to give you a lot of examples. This is The Mandalorian, and I hate underlit TV shows. Every cosplayer hates underlit TV shows, because we can't see the colors, we can't see the details. The photo on the right is a candid picture that was taken back on the set between takes. And so there you can finally get an idea of what color that fabric is made from, whereas you have no clue in that picture on the left. But again, you still also got to think about what kind of light is she standing in. It looks a little yellow looking at the wall behind her. Is that wall cream? Is that wall white? But at least you're getting a much closer ballpark idea of what that costume looks like. So sanity check. How do you decide what color you're going to make your costume after seeing these examples? The most important thing I've ever learned is think about what makes the costume iconic. When you look at the costume, at one point, when you think about the costume, don't look at a picture. When you think about the costume, what is the first or two or three things that come to your mind that you see on that costume? As I say here in my example, I don't know what the Eye of Amagato looks like. I know it's essential to Doctor Strange's magic, but it's a big medallion on his chest. But when I recognize Doctor Strange because he has a big red cloak, long dark hair, goatee, and sort of tunic and baggy pants. You know, those are the motifs you want to hit. You could spend 6 months working on the beautiful, beautiful replica of the accessories, and the only person who's going to know you've done that work is you. Or possibly, there'll be a couple of other super fans who, if they get close enough. If they get close enough, are you going to be in the hallway? Are you going to be on the stage? So think about, the iconic aspects, the things that really stick in your memory, and focus on those. Those should be your primary expenditure of effort when you're building your costume. And these examples, Rorschach and Watchmen. First thing you think of is the mask and the trench coat. Everything else is gravy. I couldn't tell you what kind of shoes he wears. Does he wear gloves? I don't know. Batman. Oh, I love Batman. You can make anything into Batman. Pointy ear cowl, put a bat on your chest or somewhere, and wear lots of black. And you're Batman. Okay, and a cape, I guess. And Power Girl, classic comic book character. White bodysuit with a big peekaboo cutout over her cleavage and a blonde bob haircut. I don't know what else she wears. I don't know what color boots she wears. Does she have gloves? No idea. But if I saw somebody in a bodysuit, as I've just described, with that blonde haircut, I'd be like, oh, you're Power Girl. Everything else could be, she could be painted green. I'll still assume it's Power Girl. So, I see a thing in the chat. What about aiming for off-screen appearance? Well, yes, that's absolutely an option. And indeed, that's the thing. You pick your battles. And here's another, putting my money where my mouth is. Pardon me, I'm just going to move something out of my way there. I went crazy trying to find the exact fabric for her blouse. Didn't matter. Can you even see the striping on that blouse there? In this particular case, I did go crazy to match the brooch because I decided that was an iconic aspect of the costume. You see the hat, you see the brooch, you see a lot of purple. So, but I don't think a single person yet has noticed. Oh my goodness, you found the exact brooch. That's amazing. No one cares. I've got the saucy tilt hat with the fruit on it. I've got the purple Edwardian walking suit. People recognize the character just from that. They didn't need anything else. Okay, let's pick up the next slide. Okay, things are not as they appear to be. Again, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that away. Same shirt. 2 production photos, 1 behind the scenes. Of course, the behind the scenes clearly in the middle. Actress is taking a break. The photo on the left, it looks like sort of what I would call a dusty blue. In the middle, you've got kind of a light sky blue. And on the right, it's actually leaning towards the green. And also you can see it a bit in the foundation and the makeup on the actress. Right versus left. Slightly different shade of skin. Again, that's all the lighting. What are you going to go for? What do you like best? That's what you go for. And honestly, if you like the offset picture, also use the offset picture. Another example, I think this was this Battlestar Galactica? I forget, I'm sorry. Is this gray? Is this khaki? Which color should you make it? And this was an off-the-rack item. This was not something made by a costume shop. This is something that a customer bought from was it All Saints? Anyway, and is it gray? Is it khaki? I don't know. So if you find it in both colors, pick the one that you like best. Pick the one that suits your coloring best. Perfection is not required. And oh yes, this is the big sanity check. Another, I mentioned earlier about how the costumes you see on a media production, the product of a team of people working on things, whereas we're just one person. There's also the fact that when we make our costumes, I find as a rule, as cosplayers, we want our costumes to last. We make them intending to wear them to many conventions, hopefully, over a period of years, perhaps. And it's got to put up with wear and tear of walking around and sitting down and even eating meals, depending on your costume. Theater and cinema aren't concerned with that. They are not concerned with, they're not even concerned with, can my actor go to the bathroom half the time? And boy, we've all learned that. We have to make sure we can go to the loo. And as cosplayers, especially competitive cosplayers, we are focused on beautiful seam finishing and exquisite tailoring, because those are things we get scored on at costume contests. Costumers, say in a stage show or a movie, they don't care. It's can we get this done in time for the take? Then we do it. Things are hot glued on. Things are stapled. It is, you do whatever you have to do to get the costume ready for the guys on set, because it's supposed to be there half an hour ago, and panic and mayhem. I have spoken with professional costumers, and their favorite tool is a hot glue gun. We hot glue our embellishment on, unless we've got a very good reason, we'd be losing points in workmanship. And then, oh yes, back to original Star Trek again. I've seen some of the original tunics, the velour tunics, on exhibition, and there's an infamous incident. There are coffee stains on Leonard Nimoy's main costume. Nobody knew about them, unless they'd seen it in person, until the new high-D restored special effects version of Star Trek that came out, about 10, 12 years ago? During that restoration process, the production team bought up the coffee stains on the velour. And then that's when they were like, oops, we had no idea those were there. And there was a lot of that, apparently, with the costuming on that show in particular. Things that were not visible pre-high D now are. And indeed, I know many a makeup person and a costume person who do not like the advent of 4K, because it's showing every little blemish, every little unsnipped thread. But that's a rant for another day. It doesn't have to be pretty inside. It's just got to last for the production. Now, that's their rule. And like I say, stage costumers are amazing, because not only did they have to just make things last while it's on stage, the costume then has to be worn by somebody else who's 2 sizes smaller in the next show down the road. So they're really good at doing temporary alterations that are going to last, hopefully just long enough to the final curtain, and then they can be taken out and the costume can be repurposed and refitted. And so kind of hand in hand with the whole screen accurate thing is screen accurate. Those costumes are not perfect. Those costumes are raggy on the inside. They have got safety pins in them. They have got elastic hidden around. Anyway, so don't lose your mind striving for perfection. Pardon me. Another example. This is a famous one. I know so many cosplayers who have either made this dress or want to make this dress or wish they could make this dress. You know how it is. And the thing is, this dress, I'm just going to check the chat box real quick, make sure no one's talking at me. This dress is an absolute nightmare to make, because you can see in these photos, there's 3 different colors there. It is apparently, when you see it on exhibit, a silver gray. It's a silver gray lame with silvery and off-white lace. But as you can see in the publicity photo there in the lower left, it was lit and it's coming across as a pale blue. Upper right, in the scene from the movie, it's coming across almost the shell pink or pink overtones. Which do you make? Again, make the one you like best. I would look terrible in silvery gray. It would wash me out. I would look awful. I would look better, personally, in a pale pink. I mean, it's not a color I'd wear personally, but if I was going to make this costume, I would choose the look that suits my coloring best. And plus, just my personal taste. I don't like baby blue, so I'm not going to make it in baby blue. Okay, pardon me. Okay, another one. Oh yes, good old Loki. Okay, another underlit, moody TV series designed to drive us bonkers. This photo on the right was taken at, I think it was one of the FIDM exhibitions, where they put on costumes from various media properties. It's gray. It's a gray on gray, or possibly blue-ish check there on the jacket. But you look at it on that very sort of brown earth tone photo on the right, it looks like it could be brown, it could be dark green, who knows? Which one do you make? Which is correct? It's the one you like best. Some people are going to say, no, it's the one that's on the screen. They are wrong. This is about what you enjoy wearing and what you enjoy making. So do not listen to the naysayers. How do you decide which hills to die on, as is the phrase I use? Well, it depends on your resources. And your resources are your time and your money and your sanity in general. I have several times had two approaches for a costume thing, particularly fabric. I will find the one that's good enough, but I can afford, and I can afford it. And then there's, oh look, there's the gorgeous, extremely expensive one that might, to my eyes, seem a little more accurate, but costs 3 times as much. Now, I did this once. The Missy costume I showed you earlier, I first made that in a polyester gabardine because it was $5 a yard. And I could afford that, and I made it, and I was okay with how it came out. But you know, polyester gabardine, not great at taking a crease, not great for tailoring. And I had enough lead time. I managed to save up some money, and I realized I found this gorgeous wool down at B. Black and Sons in Los Angeles. Pardon me. And I was like, wait, I can afford this better wool. So I went and bought it, and I remade the costume. I was lucky. I had the lead time to make it again before the event that I was taking it to. And indeed, I was actually about 3/4 of the way through the gabardine. Like, I think I hadn't finished the blouse. That was it. And I made myself finish the first version of the costume, and then went and made the second version. But that's an unusual situation. But my personal approach, I like to have something done, and then if I have the time and the money to think, can I go back and redo XYZ? Can I rebuild that piece, that blouse, buy a different piece of jewelry? Then I will. But otherwise, I will lose all my time trying to get one fiddly detail completely correct, and then suddenly it's 3 days before the convention, and I have only got the pants of the suit made. Panic and mayhem. And as I've said before, oh, pardon me, oh good lord. Pardon me. Said before, pick a solution that flatters your coloring in your build. Oh, I see someone's got a chat. Pardon me, I know everyone will see this. Friend did a version of the Labyrinth dress. Oh yeah, I know several people who have done the Labyrinth Labyrinth dress, and they've all been gorgeous, I must say. I've never seen an ugly one. But I also have seen online much debate, people just talking about, oh my lord, what color do I make this? You make it the color you want. And as I said before, pick a solution that flatters your coloring, your build, your budget, your time budget, as well as your money budget, because some fabrics are a lot trickier to sew and take more time to sew than others. So Carol Kane plays the character Pelia on Strange New Worlds, and the minute she came on screen, I'm like, I'm cosplaying that, because she's over 50, she's curvy, she's short, she's sassy. I'm like, this is my kind of character. But her hair is ash blonde. I went through a lot of pictures looking at her hair across her career and in the show. I was like, she's a cool blonde. She's an ash blonde. I am terrible as a cool blonde. I've learned that the hard way. So I immediately jettisoned matching her hair colors. I'm not going to do a screen accurate hair color. It's going to look terrible on me. And I opted to get a warm blonde wig because it looks much nicer on me. I said a pepperoni pizza for her face. Or the red comes out on my skin if I wear a cool blonde color. And then an example for fabric. Next up on my list, I want to make a Star Trek Voyager. I have been dared to do Captain Janeway, because why not, right? And Star Trek Voyager uniforms, for once, as a Star Trek uniform that's not made from spandex, it's made from wool gabardine. And I went swatching, and I went researching, and wool gabardine is $65 a yard right now. Yikes, yikes, that's a lot of money. So I'm looking at the uniforms, I go, you have the color contrast on top, kind of like, several Star Trek uniforms have that color contrast, head and shoulders. And then it's black. So you know what? I'm going to spend $65 for 1 yard of the color contrast, this nice red wool gabardine. And then for everything below it, I'm using a cheaper fabric. Cheaper is a relative term, but I think it's like $20 a yard. Because honestly, again, when you interact with each other, people aren't going to notice the fabric I'm using. Even though it's like 3/4 of the area of the costume, they're looking at my face, they're looking at my head and shoulders, they're looking at my hair. So sure, I'm going to have that nicer fabric up top, plus fitting around the shoulders, a wool gabardine. I can shape that a little more easily. And then for the body, probably a wool poly mix, not quite so sexy, but way more affordable. I could not make the costume if I tried to do the entire thing in $65 a yard fabric. I just can't afford it. And that's my solution. So yes, that was the outcome I was just discussing, playing Pelia from Strange New Worlds. The wigs look similar, but said I went for a shade that worked much better for my skin. And even then, I'm wearing so much makeup. Again, that's a whole other panel talking about how to figure out your how to prime and all that stuff, and how to color balance your foundation. But I should do that for a panel. Anyway, so I'm absolutely happy with how this costume turned out. Actually, I'm really pleased with how the look came together. I did not expect to actually look, if I say so myself, look that good as a blonde. So there we go. But that's the thing. I said I made the decision. It's not screen accurate. I don't care. Things are not as they appear to be. This is a rare case of costumes looking a lot darker off screen. This is again from the Fidim for Ragnarok, right? And not, I wouldn't use these as reference photos. I mean, because it's a big wide angle photo and I'm not getting a lot of the detail there. But you're seeing there, on Thor Ragnarok, I believe, a lot of the scenes were very heavily lit, like overlit. So it's for that set of costumes, I'd actually go to screen grabs and start looking at screen grabs for the details that I want as a cosplayer for recreation. But just, it's not always lighter. Things are not as they appear to be. Another example, I know a lot of folks, oh, hang on, I was gonna hide the text. There we go. A lot of folks love this character and this ensemble in particular. And when you're watching that episode on TV, it really does look navy and red. Just the way it's lit. There you go. That on the left there, that is actually the original drawing from the costume designer. It's gray and orange. It may not be, unfortunately, that's another thing. My monitor, of course, what I see on my monitor, what you see on your monitor, hopefully they're close to the same. But yes, the designer did actually confirm at a Q&A. I heard this from a friend who was there. They were asked, what are the colors of that costume? What did you make that costume in? Yes, you've drawn it in gray and orange, but what we're seeing on the screen looks navy and red. And she said, no, it is actually gray and orange. If you see the costume itself, if it goes on exhibit somewhere, it is gray and orange. It is not navy and red. So, and we're lucky in that sometimes we have the opportunity to talk to customers and they tell us things. I'll get into that in just a second. Sanity check, and pardon me, hydration check, hydrate. Know when to take a break. I'm really good at going down rabbit holes. I have that hyper-focus superpower, but it's a double-edged sword. So when you find yourself really obsessing over something, that's also kind of a cue to step back, take a deep breath for a day, for a couple of days, however long you can spare. Consult with the hive mind, as I say, get a gut check from your friends who are fellow customers, and make sure that you're still on an even keel. Am I overthinking this? Yes, Johanna, you're overthinking this. Okay, I'm going to put that detail aside. And yes, sometimes throw money at the problem is a solution, but not always. We can't always afford that. Wish we could. If money were no object, cosplay would be a much easier hobby. To quote Adam Savage, there's no skill that improves with exhaustion. And when you're hyper-focused on making a costume during con crunch, you suddenly realize you've been sitting at the sewing table for 14 hours and you haven't eaten yet. Stop. You'll start making, or have already made, some very bad decisions if you push yourself too hard and don't take those sanity breaks. Another example of how things can be different. Same costume, 3 different shots. The bodice looks like a different color. The skirt varies a bit. I understand, I'm not into Hocus Pocus, but I have talked to Hocus Pocus cosplayers, and they have said that apparently her accessories keep changing. Not just in terms of like bad continuity, or is she wearing the hood in one shot and not wearing the hood in the next, but apparently when you're watching the movie, the colors, the way the light hits it, the colors change a lot. So again, another example, lighting changes everything. Do you make something a nice wine red with the gold embellishment like you see there in the middle, or are you going to aim for that more sort of like that shot on the left? To me it looks like it's a black and red shot taffeta almost. Do you go for that? Go for the one you like. Go for the one you enjoy. This is from, I want to say Enchanted, Same costume. Is it gray? Is it sky blue? Well, depends on the lighting. Make the one you like. I, for one, again, I said I would make this in blue. I would not make that in gray. Gray is not a good color for me. But which one is accurate? The one you like the best. Oh, I'm really hard at this sanity check, accepting certain inevitable facts. Remember I said earlier about we have chances to talk to customers, professional customers. Sometimes we get a chance to even talk to the people who made the costumes that we're trying to recreate. And you say, oh, I love that fabric. Where did you get it? And they're like, well, we found it at this tiny little fabric mill in Italy, and we bought all of it. That was literally an answer I got once when talking to Louise Page, who was the costume designer for the first few years of the new Doctor Who series, who was also sworn she's never going to tell us where she found David Tennant's trench coat fabric, but that's another story. But she said it several times, she's like, oh yes, we found this fabric at Place X and we bought the entire run. This fabric does not exist anymore. So do not lose your mind trying to make an exact copy, because it doesn't exist. I love costumers, the professionals, but man, they do that a lot. There are, don't lose hope. I mean, if you really are hung up on, but it's a certain kind of print, it's a certain kind of pattern, I really do think it's one of those iconic details on which I should be focusing. There are things like Spoonflower, which are a print-on-demand service where you can upload a pattern, or somebody's already done it for you as a fan, and they'll print fabrics matching these uploaded patterns. And they offer a variety of fabrics, everything from a lightweight muslin. They do silk and twill, cotton twill, and even terry cloth, all kinds of fabrics, but it's extremely expensive. Spoonflower is extremely expensive, and it is, at the end of the day, just a print, which means it's going to fade over time. Even when you swatch and swatch and swatch, sometimes those inkjet printers just can't quite get you colors that you want. If you want to use Spoonflower as a solution, absolutely swatch it first. I think they sell swatches for $5. Always get a swatch, and then decide if you want to take the plunge on that. Again, my opinion is you find the fabric that's good enough, that fits your budget, and run with that, because you are never going to find an exact match. 3D printing. 3D printing on fabric is a really hot thing right now. Indeed, there are several, I want to say, Marvel costumes that featured, Star Trek. It was Enterprise. They 3D printed little tiny Star Trek deltas. We all thought they were silk screened. And at first, later on they were, but at first they weren't. Anyway, Enterprise, they 3D printed deltas, little metallic deltas, onto the fabric and cut that. Fantastic solution, and 3D printing on fabric is absolutely an up-and-coming thing, and there's going to be a lot of fun stuff we can do with that. If you have access to a 3D printer, most of us don't. There are Star Trek costuming in particular, I should say, is a specialty unto itself, because they are doing specially woven fabrics. Like Strange New Worlds features fabric that they silk screened with a silicone ink onto the fabric, the little motifs, the little command motifs and things. And you're never going to find anything even close to that in the stores. I've done my own version. I have a Cricut machine. I cut stuff with HTV and ironed it onto my fabric, because I decided that was an iconic part of the costume that I had to nail it as close as I could. I'm lucky. I have the tools and I have the resources to buy this vinyl and find a pattern I could cut. Would I have gone ahead making the costume if I couldn't have recreated that teeny weeny little detail? Yes. Yes, I would have. I would have looked for a textured ponte knit that looked close enough, that kind of, 10-foot rule, and I would have still made the costume, because I liked the character and I liked the show, and for me, that's part of the reason why I cosplay. But I must admit, very pleased with myself, verging on the smug, because I was able to do that. But anyway, you can only, that the fabric matching is absolutely where you have to step back and ask yourself, how much money is this worth? How many sanity points is this worth? How much time in my prep am I losing as I'm constantly hunting and hunting and hunting for the perfect fabric that may or may not exist? Having a 6-month lead time to make a costume is great until you spend 5 months swatching fabrics, thinking you're going to find your unicorn. Oh, sorry, let's see if we had another question. Pardon me. Another example. Good old Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, I know, has made many a cosplayer cry themselves to sleep. Because again, lighting, because that's a show that it's very effects heavy. There's a lot of stuff shot on green screen. There's a lot of stuff shot outside on locations there. Again, you have wildly varying light conditions. Same dress. And remember that viral meme, the is it, oh God, is it black and gold? Is it blue and white? Whatever dress. This is like that, but only worse. It's the cosplayer's version of saying, which one do you make? The one you like best. And I'm going to keep saying that because it's true. Now let's talk about superheroes, and let's talk about post-production and how those two things go hand in hand, especially now. Superhero suits are always heavily altered in post-production. Zippers, bulges, you know what I'm talking about, right? Bulges, weird wrinkles, they're all removed. When you're working on photos of your costumes, Photoshop the hell out of them, by all means. It's a shame we can't walk around with like a real life Photoshop in front of ourselves when we're at the con. It has gotten to the point, and I'm going to show you some examples, where costumes have been completely redesigned after they've been shot. And you would never know because they get completely redesigned digitally on the actor in post-production. So, Iron Man is completely digital because it's so expensive to build, for instance. So here we go. Captain Marvel. Exact same shot, green screen before effects, from the screenshot after. Even her hair has been added digitally in post-production. The shoulder pauldrons, look at the shoulders on the left, just you see red fabric. On the right, you can see there's the shiny gold sort of armor piece that's covering it. The seam lines on her bodice have changed. The color, of course, has been tweaked ever so slightly. All kinds of changes, all sorts of changes there that I can't even see, all done in post-production. So when you make your costume, you're going to, of course, want to try to create what you see there on the right. But the idea of making something screen accurate, there is no physical, there's a point where there is no physical costume to reproduce, and you have to use your best judgment and what's going to bring you the best joy. Another example. Now, of course, yes, Thanos is digital, but I'm sharing this picture actually because of vision on the right. It's somewhat subtle, but take a look between the two pictures, left and right. They have added effects to the prostheses on the side of his head. So instead of it being a flat gray, looks like a silicone or a rubber, it's now got that kind of slightly buffed, polished silver look. That's really subtle, and they've added details, sort of carved in details. They've tweaked how his fabric looks on the on what he's wearing. And of course, all of Thanos' costume is entirely digital. The fabric, he's wearing the full mocap suit and everything. So again, when you're trying to cosplay Thanos, there's not even a hope of finding a physical costume to look at. You're just going to use your best judgment. The digital world is both a boon and a bane, shall we say. I love this example because I love Robert Downey Jr. He's come back from a lot. I like him as a guy. He's short. A lot of actors are short. The joke was in the first Iron Man movie where the suit was mostly physical. His feet only were actually parked about halfway down the shin in the costume. He was a foot taller in the Iron Man costume because they needed him to be imposing, of course. Now, this is from one of the later Iron Man films, as you can tell. In the studio, he's only wearing a partial physical suit, and the rest of it gets added digitally in post-production. And you also notice that they've played with the perspective just a bit, so that, in the shot, he looks like he's taller, he looks like it looks like there's more distance between them, between the two actors, but he also looks like he is taller as compared to his fellow actor there. All digital. Which one's correct? Which one is screen accurate? Short Robert Downey Jr. or tall Robert Downey Jr.? And finally, when I was researching and talking with the SheProp members about this panel and they loved the idea. Some of them provided me with these wonderful quotes about how so how we all lose our minds, and how touched they are that we try so hard to recreate their work. As someone on film sets on the daily, and I mean this with love, y'all tend to be more accurate than the costumers themselves. And that's from a professional. And she said, and then Abigail Casey, who's another professional costumer, said sometimes the costumes on display aren't the screen used ones. Like when you go to FIDM or you go to like Disney and they've got a costume on display, they are costumes that have been made specially for display after the filming is done. So they're far more elaborate and nicer and haven't been put together in a rush because the DP is breathing down your neck. And he said it's the 5th or the 9th version. They're more polished and they're more finished. So, as she said, she made one for a stunt double that she thought was much nicer than the one that was made for the lead. And that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at costumes on exhibit. Are you seeing a screen-worn costume? Are you seeing something that was made for PR purposes? And when it comes to using store-bought items for lead characters, they're altered to fit. Sometimes it's really subtle, like taking it in a little bit, or changing a hem or a sleeve length. Sometimes it's adding trim or changing a neckline. And then sometimes it's a total rebuild. You need 6 multiples of a shirt if you're a petite, extra small actor, but all they have left in stock is extra large. So you have to go do the major surgery in a couple of hours because the shirts had only arrived that morning and they need to be on the truck by the afternoon because it's filming tomorrow. And that's what the whole thing about staples and safety pins and Velcro and hot glue are holding together these professional costumes, because they are they're working to a time deadline that's even crazier than the ones we put ourselves under. And that is it for my slides. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen at this point and hopefully take a look at the chat box and open it up to Q&A, comments, or people who want to share their own stories about this. But my entire point of doing this talk is to basically reassure us and reassure each other, reassure ourselves that screen accuracy, while it's become this huge holy grail, amongst competitive cosplayers, amongst casual cosplayers, it really, I think sometimes we take it too far and we stop enjoying ourselves and we stop enjoying the hobby. And when that happens, something's gone wrong. We're supposed to be doing this because it's fun, because we get joy out of it. And if we make ourselves miserable looking for screen accurate, when screen accurate doesn't exist, then, it's a shame. We should be taking joy out of this and, start a campaign. So just say no to screen accuracy. Oh, I think I'm going to make a convention ribbon of that. Just say no to screen accuracy. Who's in? All right. Kathy, do we have any questions, comments? Anyone care for a mint? I'm just going to stare.
I think that you've seen all the questions over in the chat, and those are the ones we've got. I did want to talk a little bit about Lord of the Rings. I remember the big thing about Arwen's wedding dress and that green, and then we found out that it was custom dyed.
Oh, yes. Custom dyeing is also another shortcut to tears and sleepless nights, because dyeing fabric is quite literally an art unto itself. Whoa. Say about lighting and skin tones as well. Oh my goodness. So, well, I mean, lighting and skin tones, the short version is, you can take classes for months and months. And then address the issues in multiple screen-worn costumes. Okay, some closures and some which not. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna talk about the lighting and skin tones first, and then we'll talk about different differences in screen use items. So, lighting for skin tones, of course, depends on the skin tones of your actor. As a rule, lighting establishes mood. As much as, God help us, the soundtrack, when you are trying to communicate to the viewers what they should be feeling during a particular scene. And so when you've got the delicate love scene happening, the lighting is very warm, and is very intimate. And then when you're watching action scenes, as a rule, the lighting is very, it's going to be blue, it's going to be harder, it's harsher, because that fits the mood. When you are a cosplayer and you're thinking about how is my costume going to look, as I said, my rule of thumb, I mean, I gotta admit, when I'm picking colors, for a costume, I think about which conventions am I primarily planning to wear this to. Is it going to be at a turnstile con in a convention center, which is blue and harsh lighting, or is this going to be at a convention like Northwest Con or Gallifrey, which primarily happens in a hotel where the lighting is going to be warm and more flattering? An easy way for you to see what lighting flatters you, start taking selfies outside at different times of day. Screen evocation, yes, screen evocation versus screen accuracy for a campaign, absolutely. So take selfies of yourself at different times of day. There's a time of day called the golden hour, which is generally the hour before sunset. The sun is very low in the sky, the light is very red, and a lot of exterior photography for TV shows and everything happens during golden hour because that light is very flattering to all skin tones. Take a photo of yourself outside at high noon. Well, try not to squint too much, and you'll see that it is unflattering. You will see every imperfection or perceived imperfection in your skin because that blue light very rarely does you any favors. So I could spend half an hour actually talking about how do you tweak how to tweak lighting for yourself when you're, say, doing a photo shoot. But honestly, that's a whole panel unto itself. And thank you for the suggestion. I should get together with some photographer friends and we should do a panel about how to, it's not just bung a ring light off to one side and take your photos. You're going to end up with a weird look then. So I'm sorry. Yeah, doesn't have to be now. I did say it's not talk entirely. Thank you. And then, so I'm just going to read comments for a second and catch up before I go off on the next tangent. Off the shelf piece of clothing, alter for actors, yeah. Did it show off the biceps? Yes, of course. Showing off the actor's physique, always important. And custom made shoes for actors, absolutely, because you got to wear those for hours and hours and hours. Whereas, arch supports are your friend. Real quick, we can't afford custom shoes. Any pair of shoes you buy, if you can put full insoles in, do. If not, at least you can get these little jelly arch supports that are very sort of low profile because they're designed to be worn with very showy shoes like high heels. They're a lifesaver. I say this as somebody with problem feet. Anyway, screen worn costumes, some which are different from each other. Oh, okay, yes. Well, when those costume items differ, as you may have guessed, it's for practical purposes. Like if the script says Luke throws off his jacket, then they need a jacket that the actor can unbutton while on screen. 9 times out of 10, when you see stuff like a jacket that's closed and stays closed, like for instance, the Missy rig I was sharing with you earlier, I got lucky. I saw a picture of the actor on set in between takes, and she'd pulled the jacket open, and it turns out, unsurprisingly, it was not buttoned closed. The buttons were ornamental. It was closed with giant pop snaps. Why? Because those are a lot easier to do and undo, and hold everything a lot steadier. They don't wiggle like a button in a buttonhole. And I mimicked that at the time because I was being a dork and I was trying to make it screen accurate, even though it's a detail that no one would see. Then I discovered very quickly the practical purpose. When you're wearing a full wool gabardine suit, you get hot. So in between takes, I could pull it open, or in my case, when I was going to the bathroom while I was walking around the convention, I could yank the jacket open, brap, the snaps would snap open, heat would gust off me, I'd flap the jacket for a bit, and then I could snap it back up again. So that was an issue of comfort and ease of getting into. If the script does not mention that the actor has to unbutton or unzip their coat, there's an excellent chance that indeed it can't unbutton because it may have been cheaper to make it that way, or faster. He doesn't have to unzip this. I'm not putting a zipper in this, says the costumer who's already, 3 days behind. So, and again, which one do you make? You make the one you like. You make the one that fits your purposes. I would always make costumes as functional as possible, personally. Put in the pockets. Put in the snaps instead of buttons. Because, as I said, we're walking around conventions. We're not standing on a film set with people to bring us things if we need them. We need pockets. We need the ability to go to the bathroom. I'll harp on that a lot because it's really important. So yeah, again, when you're making your judgment calls, don't necessarily think about what was on the screen. Think about the challenges that you're going to face while wearing the costume. I'm going to be wearing this at an outdoor photo shoot. I'm going to choose natural fibers that are more comfortable to wear versus, or even budget, leather versus pleather, or environmental reasons. I actually prefer to use leather over pleather if I can afford it, because pleather is made from petroleum. It is going to go to a landfill eventually and never, ever rot, whereas leather eventually is biodegradable. So that's another factor when you're trying to decide regarding, what materials do I use. Sure, typical, I miss her. And I gotta admit, my mantra is, what is iconic? And I've mentioned this at the beginning of the talk, and I'm mentioning it again now. So what is iconic? When I say to you, Spider-Man, what do you think of? I see a big red onesie with kind of a web pattern on it and some big white eyes. Everything else is gravy. Or if somebody says, you Superman, there's been several different varieties of Superman costume. It's the blue boiler suit with the big red S on the chest and the big red cape. So focus on those iconic elements, because those are the items that will have caught the other viewers' eyes, the people who see you at the convention. They will be keen in zooming in on those details too, and the rest is gravy, as they say. I love the gravy. Gravy is delicious. Gravy is good, but gravy is also optional. Well, usually is. Any other comments, questions? I'm hoping people are feeling a little happier about.
There is a comment that was further up.
Oh, did I miss it?
It's from Steve Swope.
Oh, yes, the Sixth Doctor, 3 years. Oh, yeah, 3 pages. Oh, good Lord. Well, Sixth Doctor, well, you certainly didn't choose something easy for yourself, did you?
You read it out for us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep seeing people have the chat window. I'm too used to using Zoom at my work. So I spent over 3 years acquiring the fabric for my Sixth Doctor. The documentation I submitted for it was 3 pages of description and 16 pages of known errata. The Sixth Doctor, for those of you who are going, huh? Asked Colin Baker's Doctor. The costume was quite infamous. It was multicolored. It was clashing patterns. Very, very distinctive. Very much a contrast to the previous Doctor, which was beige in the Edwardian cricket suit. I can absolutely believe 3 pages of description and 16 pages of known errata. And indeed, I can believe it would take you 3 years to put, because there's more than a dozen different styles of fabric in that costume. I hope you were happy with your outcome. I don't know if there's a way for you to share a photo with the chat window. You should. But that's what matters in the end is are you happy with it? And sometimes the hunt is part of the fun. I do know several Sixth Doctor costumers who definitely got a kick out of hunting down for the particular exact plaid that is used in one patch on his coat. But I also feel like a costume like that, you also have a lot of room to compromise, because it is such a riot of color that when you're moving down the hallways, people maybe they are going to stop you and stick their face right into the costume and compare it to their own mental image. But I feel like because that costume is so riotous, and you're always in movement, the character is always in movement, that you have definitely got room for compromise. When it doesn't matter if you haven't got the exact correct plaid. If you have, that's wonderful. Take satisfaction in it, and but maybe the shade of blue for the polka. There's a blue polka dotted part. I'm doing this from memory. Forgive me. Does it have to be exactly right? No. People are gonna know you're the Sixth Doctor. I mean, it's even I think even if you had almost completely different patterns and colors, just seeing the patchwork coat. It's patchwork, it's multicolored, there's a cat lapel pin, he's got blonde curly hair. To me, those are the iconic aspects of Colin's costume. I aside from remembering, and I only remember that red plaid part that I mentioned, because some folks went out and did a spoonflower print to match that plaid pattern. They decided it was that important to them to have that exact plaid in the Sixth Doctor's coat. No, that would have been gravy for me, not an essential. Biggest single problem, says Steve. My reference photos were too warm. I end up with orange where it should have been salmon. Forehead slap. Steve, it's okay. It's okay. that it was orange and not salmon. We still love you. I'm sure the costume was fantastic. I mean, anyone who stops you and goes, your costume looks great, but frankly, I think you're 2 shades off, I will not say kick them in the shins, because we should not advocate violence. But you may give them an arch look and say you look forward to seeing their own effort at the next convention. You don't need that kind of negativity. And the costume was very well received by Colin Baker when he saw it. Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely to hear. And Colin is, I've met him once or twice as well, and he's a lovely guy. He's really leaned into being a professional love at conventions. But it's always nice when you wear a costume with the actor and they give you a thumbs up. That's when the late nights and the empty bank account, like, oh yeah, okay. But don't do it just for the kudos from other people. Do it for the kudos you get from yourself. Those are the important kudos. Again, at least for me. And because if you're not happy wearing the costume, you're going to give off vibes in the force. And people will pick up on those vibes. So please yourself first. And if you please other people, that's fantastic. 16 feet of scarf. Oh yes, says Lisa Harrigan on Tom's scarf. And I know a lot of people who compromise on Tom Baker's infamous scarf, because either they're just like, I can't knit that much, my hands will fall off, or it's a safety issue, I'm afraid I'm going to trip over it, or I just couldn't find the right colors, or I ran out of time. But as long as you've got that thing looped around your neck once and you've got generally the right palette, people know who you are. It doesn't have to be screen accurate. The Tom Baker scarf does not have to be screen accurate. And God knows I know a lot of Doctor Who costumers, fair point, have stayed up nights, again, striving for screen accuracy in the Fourth Doctor's costume. Do what brings you joy. Oh, Christine Doyle says that her Fourth Doctor scarf ended up twice as wide, so it's more of a shawl, but it's still 16 feet long. That's a great dual purpose, to dual purpose a costume, making it a shawl. That would be lovely. I'm seeing comments about from Lisa Harrigan. Oh, and I mentioned the Superman costume. Oh, the Superman S is yellow. And she mentions made the patch for Super Baby costume. Oh, Little Harold. And Ma Kent carried him on stage. But you know what? When Ma Kent was carrying a little baby, Super Baby, on the stage, I bet you the audience keyed on, there's a baby in a really cute costume. Nobody was thinking, is that baby's costume screen accurate? No, they weren't. Because the baby was the focus. I'm sure, and that's great. You have that freedom. You don't have to lose your mind getting it exactly like what we see in the film, in the classic Superman movie. Because, Lisa agrees, apparently. Time check, 2:05. We are here till 2:30 unless people get bored of listening to us talk. Any other comments that I'm missing, Kathy? Things coming through?
No, it looks like you're getting them all.
Oh boy. I should have bought a bigger can of seltzer out. I'm sitting outdoors in my garden in Portland, Oregon right now, and it's an unexpectedly sunny day, so I'm getting a little parched, excuse me. After about 4 solid weeks of rain, I'm very glad to see the sun.
Johanna, do you have any thoughts about historical costumes?
So historical accuracy, which I know is a very deep rabbit hole for people who are in the SCA, for people who compete at Costume Con, and there's indeed a huge emphasis on historically accurate fabric. Now, on the one hand, as a person who is a fan of history and living history, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if we could use historically accurate fabrics in those historical costumes, using the silk, the cotton, the linen. The problem is 2 things. Cost. Oh my God, the cost. I understand silk prices have taken a big jump lately, but even before that, pure natural fibers are not cheap, nor are they always easy to get your hands on. And there are fabrics, when I say fabric, weaving techniques or weaving types that just aren't made anymore. I wrote quite a lot about that in a website that is unfortunately offline at the moment called Fabric for Cosplayers. There are fabrics that were common in the 19th century that aren't even made anymore today. So you know, anything you make that should be made out of, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, it's been a while. Bombazine. Okay, bombazine still exists. It's hard to find. It was a very common fabric in the 19th century, but I'm not going to go out of my way to find it when I'm making a garment, because it's going to be extremely expensive and probably not in the right color. So cost is a factor, and absolutely compromise and save your budget. And then, of course, there's the fact that these historical patterns are no longer in production unless you're lucky enough to find. There are some mills that, and I know there are some sellers out there that commission for retail historical patterns to sell to the historical costuming market. That, however, comes at a premium. Again, you are paying the price. I mean, basically any custom woven fabric is going to start clocking you in about $60 a yard. And that's out of the range for most of us, unless we save up for a long time and it's a special occasion. I very strongly believe in compromise on their fabric choices for historical accurate, because, and also the dyes are different. We're using all chemical dyes now most of the time, versus the vegetable and animal derived dyes pre-industrial era. If you want to recreate historical dyes, you can. A lot of people do it in the SCA. It's a specialty unto itself. I've done a little bit of it myself for funsies, and it was great fun, expensive, and very time consuming. I think for the sake of sanity, for the sake of your budget, absolutely be ready to compromise on both your fiber content, your dye, your pattern. Again, strive for evocative, strive for, when I'm wearing an Elizabethan dress with a wheel farthingale and a big old ruff, people are going to realize I'm Elizabethan, hopefully. And the palette seems right, then you're good. Because as we all know, especially if you're going to do historical, noble garb, that kind of thing, we all go to the upholstery section. Upholstery fabric is synthetic. It's coated in stuff to make it fire retardant. It is dyed with modern techniques. If you make somebody has commented, if you make Regency accurate, it's very full in front and you'll look pregnant. Modern actresses will have you flatten the front. And yes, Victorian period used poisonous materials in their dye. Yes, we've all heard about arsenic green, which was, as the name suggests, it was a green dye. Pardon me, I'm going to use the sun. I'm going to move a little bit. The sun's coming on my face. The arsenic green dye, yes, which and it was also used in wallpaper, it was used in fabric, and it would make people sick. Or lead, lead is used in dye as well as in makeup, and give you lead poisoning. So yes, we definitely don't want to be historically accurate in that regard. Poisoning yourself in the name of accuracy is not a good idea. You mentioned, Lisa Harrigan mentions Regency accurate. I know that recently a Regency weaving technique has been revived. We talk about the very sheer muslin dresses that the fashionable ladies of the Regency would wear. And I'm trying to remember the name. I keep wanting to say it was called like Calcutta, because it was woven in India. And it was such a sheer, finely woven cotton that you could take the yardage for an entire dress and pull it, supposedly, through a ring, like my wedding ring. I just pulled off here. You could pull the fabric through the ring without it bulking up and catching. It was that fine. The technique was literally lost. And I read an article about 2 years ago that a mill in, I want to say Delhi, has somehow rediscovered and revived the technique, and they're starting to weave it. And it's an amazingly sheer. Nothing is left to the imagination. Very, very, very sheer cotton. And unfortunately, they're selling it at a premium to movie costuming and the very high-end historical reenactors. I don't know if you can get it retail yet. It was definitely a case of they were getting a government subsidy because they were reviving a native skill. And it was just this one place that was making it. But the Regency cosplayers were very excited because this was a technique that hadn't been used since the beginning of the 19th century. 19th century. Would I use that fabric if I had the opportunity? Maybe. I don't know. First of all, I'd be concerned about budget, and then I'd be concerned, frankly, about my modesty. But of course, it'd be something underneath it. I like to use, like I said, I like to use natural fibers because they are biodegradable, and because they are comfortable to wear, but they are not always affordable, unfortunately. I once got in trouble at the National Portrait Gallery because I almost literally stuck my nose onto a painting. I think it was of Sir Robert Dudley, because the portrait painter, of course, had done a beautiful job of recreating the fabric texture of this doublet he was wearing, and I wanted to see that doublet up close, and I just kept leaning in closer and closer and closer and closer, until the very nice security guard managed to stop me about an inch off the canvas. And pointed out that alarms were about to go off if I didn't step back. He had the air of somebody who had to do this a couple times a day, and I said something like, "Oh, I'm just looking at the fabric." He goes, "Yeah, we get a lot of that. We get a lot of that. People come up here and the costume wonks, because we're looking at those historical things. Take your photos. Be ready to compromise." That's all I can get. Compromise, I think, is the heart of successful, sane historical costuming. Says the woman who this time last year had a giant vat of wood shavings steeping in water so that she could try dyeing her Ren Fair gear into a historically authentic palette. So, sometimes I don't practice what I preach, but I was doing that also because it was a new skill that I wanted to learn. It was relatively affordable, and it was fun, and I wanted to see how the colors would compare to modern dyes, and that was just to satisfy my own curiosity. I have an overdeveloped curiosity bump, and it itches a lot. So that's most of the trouble I get myself into as a costumer. How was that made? I can do that. Doom. Anyway, anything else, Phil? That was a great prompt.
Any other questions?
It's 2:15, so.
Well, thanks so much for giving this talk. It's been very enjoyable, and I've had a lot of fun listening to you.
I've really enjoyed giving it. I'm glad I had the opportunity. As I said, I did create this for a convention, which was cancelled because of an ice storm. I will be no doubt offering it to other conventions in the future. I always like to give my talks a good trot around the circuit. So if you see me at a con, do come up and talk to me, or contact me online if you have questions or suggestions. I would love to hear some suggestions for other things to add to it to make it a fuller, a more complete discussion.
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty. Have a good day.
This is the final Silicon Web Costumers Guild Presents webinar of the 2023-2024 season. And we hope you'll join us for the 2024-2025 season, starting in the fall of 2024. Announcements of upcoming webinars will be emailed to Silicon Web and International Costumers Guild members, posted as events on Facebook, and published in the Virtual Costumer magazine. Information on individual webinars as they're scheduled will also appear first on the calendar page of the Silicon Web website. Please check back on this. Recordings of past webinars are also available on the webinars page. All of the webinars in the series since the very beginning are available for you to watch again. Information on joining Silicon Web is available on the Join Us page, and we'd love to have you join us if you'd like to do that. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next season.